If you want to learn more about polar bears and how to photograph them, you're in the right place. Today's guest is wildlife photographer Jim Zuckerman, and he's going to tell us about his approach to polar bear photography. Be sure to stick around because we're going to look at a few of Jim's wonderful polar bear photos and how he got them. Welcome back, Jim.
Thanks very much.
A while back, I asked you if one of your polar bear photos was taken from a tundra buggy, and your response was that you hated tundra buggies. So, how do you photograph polar bears and why?
Well, it's funny. The last time I was up there shooting the bears last November, we encountered a tundra buggy, and they're so high off the ground that yeah, they've got to be from where the photographer would stand a good 15 feet. And animals, even large animals, always look better from eye level or below eye level. When you're shooting down on them, they seem to lose stature. They don't seem as impressive. Even elephants that are huge, if you're standing and shooting an elephant, or if you're kneeling, just 2 or 3 or 4 feet makes a big difference. And so the two photography tours I've led up to the polar bear area, I've done it two ways. The first way was we were in a compound surrounded by electrified fencing, and the polar bears were free. We were the ones in the cage, basically. And we photographed them as they walked past our compound. We were right at the edge of Hudson Bay. This is where the polar bears wait for the pack ice to form. And as soon as it forms, they go out on the ice and hunt seals. And so they're very hungry and they're anxious for that ice to form. So they hang around the beach area and walk up and down. And so as they walk past our compound, we would photograph them. The second way, which was last November, we had a private vehicle, a van. And when we would see a polar bear, we would get out of the van and shoot from ground level. So we could lay down, we could kneel, we could do whatever we wanted so that we were at eye level. Or if the bears were a little bit elevated, like on a hill, we were actually below eye level. And that was just spectacular. So that's much, much better for wildlife photographers. Obviously, if you are out of the vehicle, you have safety concerns because bears can run very fast. They're aggressive, they're hungry, and I'm sure they look at photographers as being very rich in protein. So, so we have to stay right next to the vehicle so that if the bear gets close, we get in. And the general rule for bear photography there is that you can approach a bear to within, the way the Canadians say, 100 meters. So, basically a football field. And if they walk toward you, you can stand your ground, but at some point you have to get in the vehicle, and you wait for your guide to let you know when he wants you in the vehicle. And as soon as he says get in, you get in. But up to that point, you're shooting from ground level, and it's so much better than the tundra buggies. It's just incomparable.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if anybody got eaten.
Well, not yet. But if you're cautious, if you don't do something stupid, you don't walk 50 yards away from the vehicle to get close to a bear out in the distance, because he'll be able to catch you before you get back to the van. And so you just follow the rules, and they're there for your safety. And we all had a great time. And beside that, you can use the van as a windshield, because it does get windy up there and it's very cold, and that wind can be biting. And so you really want to stay next to the vehicle just for the protection from the wind.
So, does your guide carry a rifle?
He does. Yep. He's not used it in his career, but he carries it just in case.
Yeah, good idea. So, why do you think photographers are so fascinated by polar bears and polar bear photography?
Well, they're the largest predators on the land in the world. They're the closer they get, the larger they seem to you. And when you're looking at them through a long lens, they're monsters. I've got a Great Pyrenees dog, and a lot of people say he looks like a polar bear. He's 150 pounds, but when you see a polar bear in the wild, not even close. Polar bears are like 1,500 pounds, 10 times more than my Great Pyrenees. And they're just so powerful. And the way they move is just, I don't know, it's captivating. And also visually, when there's snow on the ground, as there often is at that time of year, October, November, you've got a white bear on a white background, and it's just beautiful. White on white is one of my favorite themes in nature, and it's just a stunning shot.
So what do you look for when you're taking a polar bear photograph? What composition?
Well, there's a lot of possibilities. However, having said that, the very first time I led a photography tour up to the bears, I told you that we were enclosed in a chain link, not chain link, but electrified fence. And the backgrounds that we had to choose from were limited because we were stationary and the bears walked past us. And so the backgrounds and the environments was pretty much the same. But when we were in a vehicle, we were able to drive around and look for the bears, and we would find them in different environments. We have pictures of bears on the beach. We have pictures of bears just on a white snowfield among huge boulders and in various kinds of vegetation that at that time of year turned red. It's really very pretty. So compositionally, there are different choices. You can get just a solitary bear with a white background, and I think that's a beautiful shot. Lots of times you can get a mother with with large cubs, because in October the cubs have grown, and so they're still smaller than adults, but they're larger than little babies, and so you can get a mother and a cub. I've got a picture of a mother with two cubs that was really nice, but my favorite, the one that I really coveted, and I did not get the first time, but I got the second time, are two bears on their hind feet sparring.
Oh, yeah.
They aren't fighting. They aren't fighting to the death. If there were a female around, if it was mating season, just maybe 3 months later, then their fights are serious. But in October, November, it's sparring really. They're kind of practicing for the fight that's coming, and they're on their hind legs, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So is October, November the best time to get there?
It is. You can find polar bears at other times, but it's harder because in October and November, you know where they're going to be. They're going to be at the shores of Hudson Bay in Canada, and they, like I said, they're waiting for the pack ice. So it's much easier to see many bears. Like on this last trip, I think we saw at least 7 different bears, maybe 8, and other times. I mean, we'd also see the same bear more than once, a different location. So you have just a great odds in your favor situation where you have so many bears to photograph compared to driving around or hiking around looking for them out in other places that would be hard to get to.
Okay. So that's the attraction of Churchill, I guess, is that when they're going to be
Yes.
there, and you.
Well, and Churchill provides lodging. If you're not staying in a tundra buggy, then you need a lodge, and Churchill has that. And Churchill's right on the shore of Hudson Bay. The first photography tour I did, we flew in a small plane an hour north of Churchill and landed on the tundra. And but we're still on the shores of Hudson Bay. Hudson Bay is very large, and all up and down the shoreline you can find bears, but you have to have a place to sleep. And so either you go to a camp that's been set up there, or lodging in Churchill, or you can sleep in the tundra buggy because they're outfitted for that.
Yeah, it sounds like having a place to stay would be pretty nice after being out in the cold all day.
It's very nice.
So, how do you actually get to Churchill? Only way is by air, I think, isn't it?
Um, yes, it's. Let me think. There are no roads that go all the way there. So you either go by train, which is like a 2-day affair from, like either from Toronto or Winnipeg. It's about 2 days, or you can fly, which is 2 hours, and it's surprisingly expensive. Probably because the airlines thinks, well, we can get it, and usually things in the Arctic area do tend to be more expensive just because you got to fly everything up there, or a long train ride. So what I did was fly into Winnipeg, and then from Winnipeg to Churchill. You can go through Toronto as well, but it's a little longer flight.
So, how much does something like that cost to get there?
The flight from Winnipeg to Churchill, and again, it's just like a 2-hour flight. Round trip last time was like between $1,100 and $1,200,
Wow.
and then you have to get to Winnipeg.
Right.
Yeah, but it's the only way to photograph the bears.
Yeah. Great. All right. So, what gear do you use to photograph polar bears? You mentioned they look pretty big in a long lens. Do you use a shorter lens, or do you use the usual long lenses?
Well, if you can fill your frame with a 200 millimeter, you're too close.
Yeah, I guess so.
Unless you're shooting out the window. But I would say the minimum would be a 400. I think an ideal lens would be like Canon's 1-500, or you could have a fixed 500, a fixed 600, any of those. But I prefer the zoom because it's gives you some flexibility. As the bear does come toward you, you might want to pull back to get a little more of the environment. One guy on my trip had the new Canon 800. Canon has come out with these two inexpensive telephotos in the last while, years or so. I don't remember when they came out, but it's been pretty recent. I think it's a brilliant approach to the problem of long lens photography, because years ago when people would ask me what lens should I get for wildlife photography, like I'm going on safari, what should I have? Well, it was a choice between a very expensive lens, well, I bought my Canon 500 f4 when my first digital trip to Africa in 2005, and it was $5,000. I think maybe 5,200, but now they're like 10,000, between 10 and 13,000. So you have that, or some inexpensive kind of knockoff, or you have a 200, or like an 80 to 300. It doesn't cut it for Africa. It's not long enough, or the polar bears. But now Canon came out with these two incredible lenses. They have a 600 and an 800. They're very light. They're very inexpensive as telephoto lenses go. The Canon is $700. It's like $699. And the 800 is $899. So $900 for an 800 millimeter. And I used it. It's so light. It's like holding a 200, in times past. So you have to know that it's a fixed aperture, f11.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, when we're shooting film, like when I used to shoot wildlife with film, I would use Fujichrome Pro Via because it was 100. And at the most, I'd push it to 400. But now we have cameras, mirrorless cameras that can go to 6,400, 12,800 ISO, and it's not a problem because the cameras are so good, and you can eliminate the noise or minimize it greatly with topaz denoise and neat image software. These software programs designed to do just that, and they do a brilliant job. So the f11 aperture is not, the kiss of death like it would have been when we were shooting film. And so, and beside that, the f11 does give you a little bit of depth of field, which is always good. So I used this 800 that my client had. I asked if I could take a few shots with it, and I was very impressed. So for $900, you can have the 800. For 700, you can have the 600. In fact, I have a trip to Africa later this year, and I'm going to buy the 600 for my wife because it's light and so easy to manage, and they're sharp. They're very, very sharp lenses. So the other lens that I'd recommend, Canon has the 100 to 500. I really love that because of the flexibility of the focal length range. It's very sharp, and it's a bit heavier than the 6 and 800, but it's also a larger aperture. And then on the Nikon side of the equation, that they have 400, 500, 600 in that range is what you need. I think they have an 80 to 400 that would be ideal, maybe with a 1.4 teleconverter, and you'd have enough.
Yeah, Nikon has a relatively new 100 to 400 that's supposed to be pretty nice, and it's not outrageously expensive. I think it's in the $2,500 range, if I remember right. And they're coming out with an 800 PF, but I don't know how much that's going to cost, but it'll be up there probably.
Well, the 1 to 4 would be fine, but you'd also need a teleconverter because sometimes the bears are just a little too far for the 400.
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently the 1 to 400 works really well with teleconverters, which hasn't been true of Nikon lenses in the past, so that was nice to see.
What format do you shoot?
I'm a Nikon. I've got the 500 PF, which is what I usually use for my wildlife photos, and D500, so that works out pretty well.
Okay.
Well, let me share my screen, and I'm going to.
Okay, so I wanted to start with this picture because I obviously changed the background on the bottom shot.
Right.
Telephoto lenses, as we all know, make the background significantly out of focus, and if the background's far enough away, it becomes completely undefined, like Hudson Bay back here. But what was behind this bear was exactly what you see here, the bay and the clouds. And so I did a composite. I took it, once I shot the bear, I took a second shot and focused on the background, and then I put the two pictures together. And I just wanted to offer that as a suggestion of what people can do, because the composite is what we see.
Right.
We never see out of focus backgrounds with our eyes, ever. And so this is much more realistic. And so for people who don't like to, quote, cheat in Photoshop, well, the top picture is a product of the limitations of optics. Out of focus backgrounds is a man-made construct. A sharp background is real. And so I just wanted to offer that as another approach to photographing polar bears and other wildlife. To cut out the bear, you can see the hair along the edge here. To do that, I use Topaz Mask AI. It's the best software we have for dealing with hair. So let me show you another example. Okay. There. Okay, so here's another example where I took a number of pictures of the background of Hudson Bay so I could use them in various composites. So this is just another one. And again, I use Topaz Mask AI, which isn't perfect, but it's the best we have. Um, so I just wanted to give that as another possibility. So uh, these two shots, the last one and this one, were taken from the enclosure where the electric fence was around us. And we're shooting through the electric fence, and it had big openings, so it was photographer friendly. You could easily put your 500 millimeter lens in one of the openings and just, you know, disregard the wire, but you wouldn't want to touch it.
Yeah, probably not. So
And so,
are you shooting on
so
were you shooting on a tripod or a handheld?
um, I, even though I'm using a heavy lens like the 500 f4, I tend to hand hold it because I find tripods so inhibiting. You
Yeah,
can use a tripod, you know, it's not a problem, but when bears don't move that much, uh, like these two guys sparring, they were doing this for 20 minutes, so you easily could have used a tripod.
yeah.
But so this one was not taken with the 500 f4. This was taken with my Canon 100 to 400 and a 1.4 teleconverter giving me 560 millimeters. And so you see it's at 437. So the max I could do was 560, so I pulled it back from that. And the reason I didn't use the 1 to 500 is because it hadn't come yet. It was on back order. I waited 5 months for it. And so it finally came, but at the time I didn't have it yet. So also notice something about this picture. I mean, this is what I really wanted. The two bears doing the sparring is just so cool to watch. But the bears were in a little ravine, and I was shooting from the road, by the vehicle, and we were actually looking down on the bears. It's not what I consider ideal. I would have much preferred to be on the ground at their level, but it wasn't possible. And so this is a bit of a downward angle, and I still love the picture, but it would have been better if I was lower and it would have made them seem larger.
Sure.
But notice my shutter speed at 1250. When I shoot action, and I've been doing this now for a couple of years, I put the ISO on auto, and I do not put an upper limit on it. And I choose manual exposure mode. So I set my shutter what I want, I set my aperture what I want, and I know I'm going to get exactly what I intend to get. The bears don't move that fast, but the reason I use such a fast shutter speed is because I got so tired of pictures being almost sharp. That would drive me crazy. And so now I go overkill with the shutter to make sure every hair, every detail of the teeth are sharp, because my shutter is fast and I use an aperture that's moderately small, because animals or birds have depth. And so I just want to make sure that the reason why we photograph nature is because it's full of phenomenal detail. And that's what I want to capture. So this was taken on my second polar bear trip, where we drove around looking for the bears. And here's one on Hudson Bay. Mother with two large cubs. It was really wonderful to see them interact. Out of focus background. And this was taken with the 500 f4. Yes, it's the 500 f4 lens, and there's my settings.
Yeah, that's a great shot. The last one was too.
Thank you. And Okay, look at this one. This was taken on the last trip where we were shooting from the vehicle. This is a shot that I really wanted, with the bear walking right toward the camera. And bears have this pose where they lower their heads and they're kind of like skulking along. It makes them seem, at least to me, really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And
And threatening.
yes, and threatening, and yeah, you don't want to get on the wrong side of this guy. um, so um, so I should have erased the 500. It was taken with a 560 millimeter focal length, which is the 1:400 with a 1.4. That's why it's 560. And if I had the 100 to 500, which came about a month after I did this trip, I would have kept the 1.4 on it, giving me 700 millimeters. And then you can get some really, really tight shots like this one. That's that shows how massive these guys are.
Yeah.
1,500 pounds of just, ferocious predator. So you asked before about compositions, and there's all kinds. Here I did not include any of the environment because I just wanted the full frame of the bear. And this one I liked a lot because I just thought that was different. And
can you make that full screen?
Let's see.
Yeah.
I'd never seen a polar bear shot like that before, where he's looking through grass. And again, I was shooting from the vehicle, and the distance between us was probably, I'd say, 150 feet, something like that.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, it is. But the van's door is open, and we're ready to jump in if we need to. And
That'll take the hindmost, huh?
Yeah. That's the only ones I prepared for you. I can show you more, but that's the ones I prepared.
Okay. Oh, there's
Let's see if I can find another one here. Let's see.
there's one that you sent me that I titled "You Looking at Me." It's sort of the bear and just looking straight at the camera.
Unfortunately, my icons don't turn quickly.
Yeah.
Here's one where I used just the environment and had the bear small in the frame. When you're in a vehicle and you can drive around, and we were based in Churchill, and we would drive to the outskirts of the city, you have just a lot of different possibility of environments. And one interesting thing about Churchill is that they don't want anybody outdoors after 10 o'clock at night because bears come through the town. Yeah, there's another one where I left more of the environment. Let's see. It was actually, you can see the snow here. It was snowing here. I don't know if you want to include these in the video. I like this one a lot. You've got Hudson Bay back here out of focus.
Yeah, if you got a video, go ahead and show it.
A video? I don't.
Oh, I thought you said
I did. Oh no, sorry. So here again, the bear is on an elevated plateau, and we're lower where the van is, and you can see that looking up at the bear, it is such a much more of a compelling viewpoint than if you're looking down, like from the tundra buggies.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I haven't ever seen any tundra buggy photos that look anything like what you're showing.
Well, you won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a really nice shot of a bird walking on the crest of a pile of rocks. They're such impressive animals.
They are indeed.
So, do you want me to keep showing more?
I think that'll do probably.
Okay.
I mean, we could do this all day for sure.
Yeah, I know. I know. Let me also mention that, let's see, when you go on a polar bear trip, and by the way, the next tour I'm leading is November of 2023.
Oh, wow.
So we also have up there's foxes and ptarmigan. On the first day out, we got the beautiful shot of red fox. Unfortunately, it had gotten one of its legs caught in a steel trap. People up there trap these things, and it's horrible. Wait, hang on, let's see, where is it? It's just horrible. But and what I was told, it shoot his leg off so it could be free. Wait, let's see, where is it? Hang on. No, it's not the one. But it healed, and there it is. This is the fox that we photographed on the very first day. It's just so beautiful, and it had snowed the night before, and it was a perfect image. Pretty close to the vehicle, we got out, and it just sort of hung around because it had been injured, being caught in a trap and missing part of one of its front legs. It could hunt, but not well, and so people in the area left food out for it.
Uh-huh.
So that's nice that they did that. One shot, another shot that I really like is we had close encounters with ptarmigan, and in the winter, their white coats blend with the white snow, and it's beautiful. Let's see, let me get the picture. Look at that.
Yeah,
Isn't that cool?
it is.
Yeah, they were pretty cooperative.
Yeah, I guess so.
Um,
Too cold to move around much, I guess.
well, if it was too cold, they'd fly to Florida,
Yeah.
like half of the Canadians. But the ptarmigan was just a real treat. And we also had, there it is. So this is another fox that we were able to photograph up in Churchill. They're really beautiful. These are essentially red foxes, but I guess black fays.
Yeah. Yeah, and you get some cross foxes that are a little bit of each.
Right, that's right. Yeah. And one of the people in my group got a gyrfalcon, white bird. We saw it, and she was on the right side of the vehicle. We shot it from the vehicle. She rolled her window down, got it, and then it flew off. But beautiful white bird against the white sky. Great shot.
Yeah. That'd be pretty impressive. So talk about the details of your tours up there for people that might be interested. What it costs and all those sort of things.
Well, you mean the polar bear trip specifically?
Yeah. Why don't you?
Put,
Okay. Go ahead.
well, unfortunately, polar bear trips are expensive. This, by the way, is just on the tundra. You can see what a lot of the environment looks like at times. Depends on where you're driving. Polar bear trips are really expensive because the window of opportunity for the people up there to make money is small, like about 6 weeks.
Mm.
And you've got supply and demand. So many people want to go up there. So the trip ends up being approximately $8,500. That includes all lodging, all food, all ground transportation when you're up there, guiding, critiques, photo instruction, and you have to add on to that the flight from Winnipeg to Churchill. And like I said, you could do it a lot cheaper. Instead of spending the 11 or 1,200 bucks on the flight, you could take a train, but it's a long train, a couple days. And they can always go to my website and get more information, jimzuckerman.com. And the number of spaces I can take is limited. Last November, we limited to 7 people, and that's pretty much what it is, because the space in the vehicles, we have 2 vehicles, and with me and the driver, that about fills up the vehicle. So maximum 7 people. And it's a thrill, I'll tell you, to be in the presence of such impressive animals. Their paw prints are huge. Sometimes we get out and photograph just a paw print, in the ice or snow.
Yeah. Yeah, they are impressive critters, that's for sure.
Yep. And like with all wildlife trips, you can go back a second time and a third time, and the picture you take will always be different than the previous times. I've seen that over and over again when I photograph jaguars in South America, in Brazil, or African safaris. The pictures you take are just so different from the previous times.
Let's see, can you stop screen sharing so we can go back to full screen? You and I? There we go. Okay. Not that the bears aren't prettier to look at than we are, but so anything else you want to talk about as far as your trips and so forth?
Well, for the past 2 years, I've not been traveling very much. The only international trip I did was this past November with the polar bears. But tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I'm leaving for 2 trips back to back to Europe, Spain, Portugal, and then Holland, Belgium. And then I have a trip mid-May to the swamps of Louisiana. That's really cool. And then the end of May, Morocco. And so finally, after 2 years, I am able to go back to conducting my business like I had been for many years. And I'm really looking forward to shooting again.
Yeah.
In July and August, I've got a trip to Indonesia. And September, Norway and Denmark and Peru, and on and on. I go all over the world. I go all over the world, and I take photographers to only the best places where I want people, when they see something, whether they walk into a cathedral or they pull up to an African tribe in Ethiopia, I want them to go, wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's those moments that I seek out in my own life, and that I want to share with my clients, because the world is full of them, and you just have to seek them out. And when you photograph them and you bring your pictures back home, your friends are incredulous and envious of what you've seen.
Yep.
That's what I want to give my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing your approach and insights to polar bear photography. It's always great fun to get together with you.
Yeah, for me too.
If you want to learn more about polar bear photography, check out the episodes with Dan Cox and Michelle Valberg in my polar bear collection on YouTube. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode of Photographing the West. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.